the notes that we are now going to distract, to remove, and we punch them, and then we shred them into little bits and make them into some sort of powder and fix it into a briquette. Now you're talking the equivalent of just, you understand? So now you've shredded, you've put them into dust-like material, you've compressed them into briquettes, okay? This is a briquette.
So they can come and see where they're being destroyed. So
them into these things. This is what it turns out to be. So first, just to give you some background numbers, the exchanges that we saw, and this is now using all the transactions say to Monday, of the transactions in 0 to, or let's say less than 500,000 Kenya shillings. In value terms, so now let's talk value. By the way, there will be a press release after this sometime today, which will, just to be sure that we don't get mixed up in the numbers. Numbers are important to all of us, but anyway, but you can quote these numbers as you see fit. So in terms of values, so less than, transactions that were less than 500K, in terms of values, there were 62%. So 62% of the transactions were less than 500K, 500,000. 79% of the transactions in value terms were less than 1 million. And if you even push the number, the level higher to 2 million, 92% of the transactions in value terms were less than 2 million. Now, in terms of numbers, if you think of how many transactions we did during this whole process, 96% of them were less than 500. So there are many, very many small transactions, 500,000 that is. And if you go to 1 million, it is, or let's just say 99% of the transactions were less than 1 million. Now, last week, or last time we were here, when I gave some of these numbers, somebody asked me, what do we mean by this? And I think there are two sort of points I would make. First is that just accepting that the transactions are small. So those people that had that we expected to bring huge transactions and all that, most of us have very small amounts of cash in that sense, most of us. So the other element here is that the risk-based cutoffs that we had, if you remember, we had said that until 1 million, you can go to any bank. Until between 1 and 5, you can go to your own bank. And above 5, you can go to the central bank. Those sort of cutoffs, remember, those are risk-based. So this actually validates, or should we say, it confirms that those risk-based cutoffs were appropriate, meaning they were not excessive. Now, most people were well under the cutoff of 1 million in terms of just going to any bank and making their transactions. So that's a good set of things there. Then, obviously, during all this process, I talked about the AML-CFT measures have been fully deployed. I talked about that. By the way, I don't know if I said this, I think I didn't. I should have underscored that it wasn't just the banks. It was the banks, it was the forex bureaus, it was the microfinance institutions, MRPs, PSPs, all of them. Yes, I did mention that. So it wasn't just banks that were following the enhanced measures in terms of checks that were in place. And one of these, obviously, is the suspicious transactions, right? So how many suspicious transactions were filed or were flagged? How many transactions were flagged? And during this period, June to September, 3,172 suspicious transactions were flagged. Now, That is a large number, 3,000, meaning the investigators need to follow this and try and connect the dots. But in this day and age, with computing, with AI, with other techniques, and obviously with very energetic staff, you can deal with this within some period of time. So it doesn't mean overnight, but it means that in a particular, an appropriate length, these matters can be dealt with. Now, I also wanted to give you the number of transactions that took place in the country during that period, but it runs into the billions, I'm sure. Wallace, thank you very much. I haven't vetted this, so if it is wrong, blame Wallace. So for the month of August, for instance, this is the transactions that are going through, let's say, the throughput through the various channels, CAPS, checks, EFTs, mobile money transfers, payments, things like that. The volume is something like 161 million. So 161,082,470 if you want precision. So it's 161 million transactions. So that's 1 month. So you need to appreciate that there are a lot of transactions that really take place. That check that you send, that transfer to somebody else, that transfer to your mom, all these things, that payment at a restaurant, all that in 1 month you have 161 million. Okay. So that gives you an order of magnitude to scale your numbers by, to scale the 3,000 that I mentioned a moment ago. Okay, let's move on. The other thing that you should also appreciate is once we as central bank got this information, we acted on it. I mean, all the institutions have been acting on the information that is provided to them, and or the information that is kicked up during this process. And we as central bank, one of the things we did is when we saw information, when we saw through our monitoring and whatever other information we were getting, and there was concern with a particular institution, we didn't wait. We went in and did a targeted inspection. And during these 4 months, we did 15 targeted inspections. Very high volume of inspections. But yes, we've done that. We've figured out what the outcomes were, if there are any concerns. And most of the things, most of this, you could imagine that most of this, let's say, inspections that we have done during this period of time have led to tightening of their implementation. And this is, for instance, if you see an institution, you've had, let's say, a few suspicious transactions, or for that matter, something that doesn't look right in the way they are performing, or you get information from some other place, then you do on-site inspection, and one of the outcomes there will be tightening of the way they are doing the AML, CFT measures, or whatever other things that are there. Of course, it also leads to tighter monitoring or more close monitoring of that institution and their transactions, and of course other enforcement measures. So all that and were deployed, and those were the outcomes. What about the other institutions? The other institutions, and this now I'm talking about, for instance, DCI, KRA, so the investigative agent, the Director of Criminal Investigation, the Kenya Revenue Authority, EACC, the ethics, and I don't know what EACC stands for, but in any event, so be it. And then FRC, I think I know what FRC stands for, but I think we know them. All these obviously have gotten information that is pertinent to their mandates and that they can act on. And of course, from our perspective, is to make sure that the information is going to, and then let them work. with the other agencies that they work with. That is ongoing. So the fact that demonetization has happened, it doesn't mean that that's the end of the issues. We've buried that and moved on. Oh, no, 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 no. Actually, there is good information there that the agencies, these other agencies, will continue to work on. So, what do we have before you? Before moving to something else, I need to underscore that in these cases, the investigations and all that, you cannot determine prima facie that this person is holding, what this person is holding constitutes proceeds of crime. It doesn't work that way. You don't have, it's not like you have knowledge, from, I don't know, downloaded to you that so-and-so is holding proceeds of crime. And no, it has to be evidence-based. In a sense, the information about the predicate offenses, whatever they are, tax evasion, money laundering, whatever, needs to be presented, meaning the agencies need to get that information and deal with it. So I do hope you appreciate that that is something that is done correctly because of the usual due process and other things that we mentioned there. There is also some other cases I wanted to mention, which is at the same time you have this, you also have other cases that are linked to the banking system or the banking sector and have come also in the context of this. And I think we talked a bit about some time ago, but I'll mention it now, the counterfeits. Again, if you remember, that was one of the reasons why we were doing this. And yes, as there has been a lot of, as you know, there has been a lot of work that is being done in the counterfeit area, meaning people have been arrested who have been dealing with those things. And anyway, that is ongoing. You also have had the unfortunate cases of, let's say, cash hastes. I don't like that word, but so be it. Words mean different things to different people. But so this sort of robbery of cash, and we've seen a few of those. And even those have been dealt with or are being dealt with in the context of all the investigations that are going on. So what is the strategy therefore? I don't know how many of you are interested in military history and things like that. This is your typical pincer movement. So you have dealing with these illicit transactors in a pincer movement approach. And the idea here is that, we will deal with them by, let's say, degrading them, and not just by ourselves, but actually with the other, particularly with the other enforcement agencies. Okay, let's move on. I think two things. I now want to deal with some specific issues in terms of the impact of demonetization. But I want to underscore one point, which is our monitoring of the demonetization process was not just about the flows. It was not just about the flows, meaning what is going on through them. It was actually very comprehensive in terms of information. I mean, frankly, how else do you think we found out that there was a problem in Narok, meaning farmers in Narok who are buying wheat, or selling wheat rather, farmers in Narok selling wheat with heavy reliance on cash, whatever that was. And I know some of you did go and did some sort of investigation on it, and you found that to be the case. I mean, the farmers were quite surprised by that, and they corrected their, let's say, practice and began to ask these people to bank the money. I don't know what happened, whether those people agreed to bank the money or they decided that it was too late in the evening, they'll come back tomorrow, But anyway, I think the point I'm making here is the monitoring wasn't just the financial flows. It was very much using all other sources of information. Okay, let's move on. Impact of demonetization. I want to deal with some, what I would call some straw men that you put up and then you shoot them down. But this was put up by yourselves, actually, and some of your readers, some of the population. The first question was about inflation. Oh, Governor, won't this be inflationary? And I think we've dealt with this. I mean, so if money comes into the system, won't this lead to a serious inflation? Actually, that's not what happened. And money that was, quote unquote, under the mattress or in people's vaults at home that they had built, and all those other stories that I think some of you have been retailing, if that money didn't come in, as it didn't, it was never in the system to begin with. So there's no way it could be inflationary. The impact is zero. It was outside the system. It wasn't circulating, and it remains out. Now it is worthless. So zero impact. We can discuss what has happened to velocity and things like that, but that is for another day. But in terms of impact, zero. As a matter of fact, September inflation, we just looked at it on Monday. September, the numbers is what, 3.8%. 3.8%, quite low. So I hope that can be dispensed with. But Governor, you'll ask, prices of high value commodities will rise. I don't know. Look at land, look at top of the range cars in the example that I gave you. I can only assure you that those people that in your story that would lead to that, in your scenario that leads to a pushing up of prices of land and high value assets, motor vehicles and all that, the answer is that requires the money to get into the system and the AML-CFT measures to be inoperative. If they are operating well, that won't happen, meaning the money will stay out. You can talk to any of the people that were selling high-value commodity, and there was no queue of suitors or buyers, desperate to let's say, launder their money. That didn't happen. Yes, Governor, that I understand, but what about foreign exchange? This was the other area, right? There'll be a rush to buy dollars and everybody will depreciate the currency. The answer is absolutely not. That did not happen. And the reason is because there's also been very tight AML-CFT measures. Those are, when they are operating, then everything else works well. That didn't happen, and actually the outcomes are clear in terms of stability of the exchange rate, in terms of the market being quite stable. It is true, there is a time, there had been, I guess, like a month ago when there was a sort of a steady outflow because of specific purchases that we were well aware of, which a lot of them related, or some of them, a significant portion of them related to dividends and other things like that. But that is a seasonal thing. So, and that is not a problem at all. In order to buy any foreign currency, you have to go through those measures. You have to actually explain where the Kenya shilling is coming from, and you also have to explain what you're going to do with the US dollars or whatever else you're buying. If you actually have credible answers to all those, there's absolutely no problem. There's absolutely no problem. Then there was the other one that bothered me a lot, but well, there'll be long lines like India. We long lines, shortage of notes, mad rush on September 30th. Again, the word is mad rush. I prefer something else. Manic movement on that day. And the answer is absolutely not. There are no long lines. It's true there was some times when there were, there was a few instances where in some far-flung places where maybe there was a huge demand for a week or so, but we dealt with it. So again, this is the tactical response that I'm talking about, not just general. You have a general strategy, but you also have to be tactical in terms of your response. And you're responding based on information from the ground. So information that is being provided to you by people on the ground. And I think we can all say that all that hypothesis that Kenyans are procrastinators, we just proved it wrong. Kenyans know what is good for them, and they do what they need to do in order to have the outcome that is good for them. So, and I think that was clear. By the way, on the particular day, that is on the 30th, most of my day was spent looking at images of bank halls from around the country. I got this on a sort of throughout the day, and with CCTV cameras, you can do that. You understand. This is new technology. You can. So, do you want to know what is happening in where Kayole now? You can do that. I mean, obviously, it's interesting. Maybe I'm revealing too much, but let it go. But I hope you're not surprised that that you actually can get images sent to you by the branch manager in whichever place to see how this thing. But I think you also understand how closely we monitored this whole situation. Okay, I'm about to finish. The last one, last point in this questions issue. Governor, the destruction of the notes, that is very unfriendly to the environment, right? It's problematic. You should deal with it some other way. Actually, there was a story I liked where somebody said that if you put all our notes, the notes that we are putting, that we are going to destroy, they will be taller than Mount Everest. And I kind of like that. Anyway, the facts are different, my friends. The facts are as follows. The 200 we had on June 1, we had 217 million pieces of the 1,000. I think we understand each other. That number has been out there for some time. 217 million pieces. So the value is just multiplied by 1,000. So 217 million pieces. If you put them in containers, the 40-foot containers, the ones that you see the trucks hauling from 40-foot containers, they would all fit in 5 containers. 5 40-foot containers, if you calculated. Now, if you wanted to put them in a container and yet still have somebody walk around in there because you have a pile of paper and you put them on pallets and things like that so that the forklift can pull them out, if that's what you really want to do, then you can put them in 10 containers. Double that and put them in 10 containers. But the volume is exactly, well, not exactly, is comparable to 5 containers, 40-foot containers. So I don't know if I stood on 5 40-foot containers, I'll be on top of Mount Everest. But I leave that to you. Maybe I got it wrong. And how do we discharge these things? Well, when we get them, we punch them. When we get the